we actually think consumer behavior is going to continue to shift online. And now is the time for companies to put e-commerce really at the top of their list.
The Spartan Pro Show is where you guys tune in to grow personally, grow professionally, and grow your business. No matter how your role is defined by your organization, you are a leader. Today, we have Colin Neidert and Brent Bumbaugh with us as experts in e-commerce, logistics, and analytics. I'm David Childs, CEO of Spartan Planning Group, and we have David Lillard as a co-host here. He's the president of Spartan Branding. So Colin and Brent run Tradefull. It's a complete e-commerce solution, whether it be product development, product research, supply chain logistics, broadening your exposure, or increasing sales. They can help you, and they're going to help you today and give you some context because they've been helping businesses across the country improve their operations for over 17 years. So guys, Colin and Brent, glad to have you here. You've already shared a little bit of good context, but what are some challenges that you all are seeing right now with businesses that you're interacting with, whether it be your clients or your prospects or just your friends? And then how can they dive into the marketplace and pivot if they haven't yet been taking advantage of that opportunity that's right in front of them? Pivot to serve customers, pivot to hire people that are out of work. Just share some context on that.
Yeah, David, this is Colin. Thanks for having us on the show. I think, being in e-commerce, we're dealing primarily with companies who have inventory and inventory to sell. And so they've kind of realized in this world that if people aren't physically going to stores and buying their goods, then their entire sales stream has basically dried up. So what we're talking to with whether it's current clients or even prospects, they're trying to say, what's next for our business if the brick and mortar has, like I said, gone dry. And I think what it's done for a lot of folks is accelerated their need to really explore e-commerce. Because one thing I'll say about our business in particular is, while the rest of the world has kind of shut down, e-commerce is actually up and we're growing. And as an e-commerce company, we're busier than ever. And I think what it's kind of put in the minds of management across the country is, e-commerce was kind of something that they knew they needed to play in or needed to be part of their strategy, but it was always one of the lower rungs in terms of their strategic priorities for the year. I think that's shifted since to the top. And now they're saying, if consumers are sitting at home and stuck in home, how do we make sure that our brand is still relevant to them and we have access for them to be able to buy those goods? So I think we're seeing a lot of folks out there who feel like they've lost control. And especially if you're sitting on a warehouse full of inventory with nowhere to sell it, then that's the ultimate in losing control.
Well, so with that, obviously some companies have already made the jump to e-commerce before this, and they were a little bit better positioned for what's happened. But I mean, for those that haven't, is it too late? Are they too far behind? Is there any way for them to catch up quickly?
I think they can catch up quickly. And, this is a selfish plug for Tradefull. That's kind of what we developed over the last 17 years is, can we become an e-commerce arm for our clients where if they don't have any solution at all, we're their one-stop shop and we can get them up and running in a matter of days. So, as we think about the overall landscape and where consumers are now going, we actually firmly believe that the acceleration of e-commerce is probably COVID and the government shutdown has actually accelerated how people are interacting with e-commerce. Mm-hmm. So for instance, grocery was something that consumers weren't really actively engaged in from, I'm going to buy it online. Well, now Walmart pickup, now Amazon, everything they're trying to do to deliver groceries to the household. Not only that, from a restaurant standpoint, all the carry out that's happening through DoorDash and Grubhub, and consumers are now getting used to buying different types of products online than maybe they even bought 3 months ago. And so we think that trend is going to maybe accelerate the move in key categories like grocery into an online space. So as we think about all of this, it's not too late, because we actually think consumer behavior is going to continue to shift online. And now is the time for companies to put e-commerce really at the top of their list.
That's really interesting. You know, I think that we're on the other side of that. So David gets an Amazon package every other day, if not multiple. He knows the delivery man on a first name basis. My wife and I we order our groceries online and pick them up every week. We started doing that because it was a smart decision for us, because we didn't shop and walk down the aisles and grab cookies and chips and all the things we shouldn't do. And it just made more financial sense. But I think that's a good point to remember, that there's still a lot of people that are just now starting to buy in these online marketplaces, or their buying tendencies are just going to increase, and they're going to be willing to buy things that they never would have bought before. Now that, like you said, COVID, stay at home order, all these things are driving that.
Well, and I think too, you know, even the shift of the workforce digitally, the fact that we're doing I mean, I'm sitting in my bedroom right now, doing this call with you guys. And I think workforces are also changing how they're doing daily work. So if you think about even a business to business company, what happens if they don't have a sales team boots on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how are they reaching their distributors and their customers? And if there's not an online way to maybe buy some of their product, they have to rethink not only how their workforce is structured, but how do we make goods available to our end customer, whether that's an individual consumer sitting at their home buying a pair of shoes, or whether that's someone who needs to buy a forklift, right? I think the spectrum has now opened up that if you're not doing e-commerce, then you're going to miss out on this wave that's kind of been spurred on by these unprecedented times.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think about in a previous life, I worked for a manufacturer of restaurant equipment, specifically grease traps for restaurants. And, you know, we moved products online and started selling grease traps e-commerce. Who would have 20 years ago thought that someone would put their credit card down and order a grease trap and have it shipped directly to them? But you're right. I think that scope even is opening up of the types of products and the industries that will start to leverage e-commerce and online sales. So when we talk about all of these marketplaces, a company says, okay, we need to get online, we need to start selling online. There's a lot of options out there, right? You know, and there's the thought that, okay, we could make our store, our website, our store, or you've mentioned, you know, we talked about Amazon or eBay, or, you know, we could even talk about Walmart and some of the larger retailers. You know, what are some of the major hurdles or challenges that people are going to face as they try and get on those platforms?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's definitely, there's multiple options. You guys are in the branding and marketing side. So you know how important it is to control your brand online. I think one of the things we find with clients right away is they make that step to go sell on an Amazon or an eBay or even Walmart. And they find that there are other sellers of their brand who have already beat them to their product page. So typically what happens is if you are somewhat of an established brand or a known brand, you're going to be dealing with issues of did your supply chain get a little bit leaky? Meaning that did you sell to a distributor who then sold it to someone else who now put your goods online? And we find right away that companies who say, hey, I'm ready to start selling on Amazon, find they're actually competing against their distributors and other third parties, and they just need to clean up that space. I think the other thing that we encounter a lot is there's just a lack of knowledge on how marketplaces work. And in particular, a lot of the marketplaces are very relationship driven. And in order to get, you know, key access to things like promotions, but then also just, you know, if there's ever an issue with your product when you go to sell it online, being able to have somebody at that marketplace on the other end of the phone is not really given to many companies that are first starting out, right? So if you are a brand who says, I want to go sell on Amazon, they certainly have ways for you to do that. But know that if you ever run into any pain point, sometimes it can be unsolved for quite a while, especially if you don't have that marketplace representative on the other side.
Yeah, and so what can people do to overcome those issues? I completely agree. Owning your brand is critical. And if you're not doing the work of branding your company and creating branding in the marketplace, someone is. Whoever's getting your product and using your product, they're creating the brand perceptions for you. So, what is it that people can do to overcome some of these issues?
Yeah, I think, and maybe I just take a step back too, because having been in e-commerce for a while, we kind of take for granted just the understanding of the space in general. So what I would maybe just say to frame this all in is, if you look at e-commerce in the US in particular, Amazon's going to be about 50% of all US e-commerce sales. The other marketplaces like Walmart, like eBay, Google's now trying to get into this, same thing with Facebook, they make up about another 15% of all e-commerce transactions and sales. Then the other third of the market is made up of individual websites. Think of millions and millions of individual websites that probably aren't doing a lot of daily volume, but they make up the other third. So when we talk with clients, our goal is to get your brand in front of as many eyeballs as we possibly can. If 2/3 of that market is made up on marketplaces, the first thing we have to do is, Dan, how do we play on those marketplaces? And then if we do have to compete against other sellers of our products, we have ways and means to help you kind of clean up your footprint, so to speak. But the ultimate goal is we think, especially down the line, it's going to be really, really important to have an omni-channel presence so that you can be found really anywhere that the consumer is going to look. And we think marketplaces, again, not just Amazon, but some of these other marketplaces are going to continue to gain traction with the consumer base. And then maybe stepping even further forward, if you think in the next couple of years how voice is really going to change how consumers are searching. I know for me personally, I use Siri a lot more than I did even 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing Alexa enter the home, Alexa enter cars. We're seeing Google Home now entering folks' living rooms. And so when they start to buy products by simply talking to their Google device and saying, hey, can I get this pair of shoes? Google's going to surface whatever pair of shoes Google thinks is relevant. And there's going to be algorithms to do that, right? But if you're not even on those marketplaces to begin with, then now all of a sudden your brand has not only lost control from an e-commerce standpoint, but even from a search standpoint, now that scope has been changed or altered altogether. So we look at this as truly from a very omni-channel presence. The beauty of online is it's unlimited shelf space. So we try to hit as many marketplaces as we possibly can, including your own website.
Yeah, and so when you talk about omni-channel, the first inclination, I think, when someone hears, well, Amazon owns 50% of the e-commerce space, is, well, I just need to get on Amazon, and then I'm on 50%. But what you're suggesting is, if you may be missing out on a key segment, your segment may be searching through Siri because of when they're buying, how they're buying, and so if you're not on some of these other marketplaces, you're missing out on opportunities.
Yeah, well, and you have to play on Amazon. You absolutely do. I think it's important, though, to make sure that you're dealing with a partner who can give you the most access to Amazon as possible. So when I say that, we've been a strategically managed account for a number of years, really since the beginning. We were one of the first third-party watch sellers in 2003. And what that gives us access to is it gets us access to people on the other side of Amazon. But when things don't go well, then that at least gives us someone that we can speak to. But then I think the other thing to just consider is Amazon does have a program where you can send goods into their warehouse and they'll fulfill orders. You also have to keep in mind that when we think about this government shutdown or with COVID, Amazon kind of pivoted the goods that they were receiving. So they said, we're only going to receive what we deem as essential goods. So if you were just an Amazon seller, and maybe you were even a large Amazon seller, and you were relying on Amazon to receive your goods so that you can continue to have sales during the midst of this crisis, there was a period of time where your sales got shut off from Amazon as well. And so I think as we've talked to even companies that are on Amazon, they're looking at saying, how do we still play on Amazon, but gain some control? The way that Tradefull has really gained control is we fulfill all of our own orders. So we still get Prime badging and we still participate in seller fulfilled Prime, but we kind of control the logistics side of it and can use our inventory not only to feed Amazon, but then to feed all the other marketplaces simultaneously.
Yeah, so speak to that, because, you know, in my mind, there's some benefits to leveraging Amazon and not having to take on the responsibility of delivering and sending to all these different platforms. But at the same time, it sounds like you lose control, right? And at some point, something like this happens and you lose control over deliverability.
Well, and I also think, let's just say you're a company that has inventory in your own warehouse and you're fulfilling traditional retail brick and mortar. So you make widget A, and that widget's sitting in your warehouse, your manufacturer, your distributor, whatever it is. You have to sell that into traditional retail physical stores. Okay, so there's going to be inventory set aside to do that. But then if you also want to sell on Amazon, you have to segment some of that inventory and send it into an Amazon facility. Okay. Then let's say you want to do sales on your own website. Now we have to make sure we have inventory for that. So the way that Tradefull thinks about it is to really gain control, take your one set of inventory, whether that's at your facilities or one of Tradefull facilities, and make that live all over the internet, so that the inventory can be used to fulfill your Amazon order, your eBay order, your Walmart order, your own website, or even your traditional brick and mortar. And that allows you to not only save from a cash standpoint and how much you're carrying in inventory, but it allows everything to be live and for sale all the time. And so that's how we kind of think about, you know, not only controlling the marketplace and the product listings that exist all over the marketplaces, but then how do you control logistics and make sure that, you know, if something were to happen at another facility, we can at least continue to fulfill our orders both online and through traditional means. Yeah,
that's a great point. So, you know, we were chatting before we really got started with the podcast. And Brent, you know, I asked a question and that you went into some detail about. You know, you are an e-commerce company. You have all this experience in e-commerce, but even you have to be pivoting right now and trying to figure out how to respond. So what are you guys doing to pivot during these times?
Yeah, so great question. And I think, you know, the way we're looking at the marketplace is being able to, you know, I think David mentioned earlier about companies that are slowing down, for the obvious reasons. You know, we're really looking to put fuel on the fire for them and working with companies who have inventory on hand that they can actually get out to end consumers to make a difference, which then is selling their product, which then in returns get people back into their warehouse, into their facilities to make more products, getting people back to work, to really, you know, shift and pivot, you know, in that direction. So there is a real good feel-good story about being able to get end users product who are in need, and then also with the manufacturers to get, you know, people back to work. And it's a wonderful opportunity that we have to be able to pivot in the marketplace to do that, and also have conversations with companies to really understand what does it look like to diversify, you know, their sales team, sales channels, as we talked about a little earlier, and really, you know, look at the different marketplaces to be able to get additional eyeballs on their product. So when you look at, you know, that third of someone's business, where there's just their .coms, you know, et cetera, you know, if we can drive, when they work with Tradefull's platform, to get, you know, millions of eyeballs on their products in multiple different channels, is somebody might be, you know, hey, I want to just shop on eBay, or I just want to shop on, you know, Walmart, et cetera, Amazon. You know, we can drive that visibility, you know, across all the platforms in the marketplaces with our proprietary software to really help organizations, you know, solve for that they may be, you know, challenged with today.
So kind of taking from there, our listeners are primarily successful executives or business owners. And I guess our listeners could be morphing over time too, again, as they're pivoting. But what are one or two of the simplest things that they can do to increase their profitability or their sales?
David, I'll jump in here. The big thing when you think about selling online is every time you add a touch point into getting a product to your end customer, you're adding cost, right? And so one of the pieces that we really try to focus on is the cost of shipping a product. And what companies find today is unless you're doing a lot of small parcel packages, it's very difficult to negotiate freight rates. And so one of the things that we try to emphasize, especially with clients right away, is as you go into fulfilling your product and your orders, in order to compete with some of these best-in-class marketplaces that are really shifting to 2-day delivery times, you have to be doing significant online volume in order to make your shipping rates something that will benefit your profit and loss statement, right? So for us, we really try to partner out the gate with our clients and companies and give them really our shipping rates at scale. So, we've been around for a long time as an e-commerce retailer. One of the things that we try to do right away is save money on shipping, because most companies online, that's going to be one of their biggest cost buckets and one of the biggest cost drivers in their P&L. I think the other thing is expertise. So that sounds simple, but there's kind of the old saying that you can either know this and learn it yourself, or you're going to spend 5 years and a lot of money trying to figure it out. So I think e-commerce is evolving so rapidly that if you're not working with experts or have a team that really understands the space, you can spend a lot of dollars trying to figure it out yourself. And I can tell you that the marketplaces and what's going on online is going to pass you by.
I've heard something very similar, like a smart man learns from his own mistakes. A wise man learns from someone else's mistakes.
That's it. And that's kind of the core of what Tradefull's been. So, we're not just a technology company. We are that, but what we really are is we started out as a retailer. So everything that's baked into the technology came from pain points and how are we going to solve this problem and why are our costs going up here and how do we bring those things down. So we've taken all those 17 years of learnings and tried to put it into our system. And I think that, to the earlier point, there is a lot of noise in the e-commerce space because everybody is an e-commerce advisor, right? And I think you need to just really sit down, and whether it's Tradefull or someone else, you just need to understand what's the benefit that they're trying to drive home. And if they haven't done it themselves in terms of selling online, I would be a little bit cautious of the advice that you're getting.
Great advice. So I know that someone out there is probably asking this. It's much easier to take your products online, let's say with an Amazon, that there's a built-in platform and there's countless users navigating it every single day. So if I'm a business owner, I'm asking, can my website, if I'm going to sell online, can my website really compete against an Amazon or a Walmart or an eBay? I mean, is there any point in even trying?
Yeah, I think it all kind of depends on how you view investing in behind your brand. So just let me give you a for instance. With Amazon, you already know there's hundreds of millions of eyeballs and people visiting that marketplace. Same thing with Walmart, right? Amazon is very search term driven. And so when you place ads on Amazon, you're placing them against certain search terms, and Amazon is using algorithms to make sure that your product is being shown at the top of search based on your bid levels and how you're bidding against those search terms. Okay, so there's already built-in traffic on Amazon, but the key for you as a brand is how do I make sure that my product is visible in those top few spots? Okay, there's a lot of expertise that goes into just getting visibility to your product. So I think the misnomer that's out there is if I list my product on Amazon, that automatically equates to sales.
Right.
And what I will tell you is you will show up at the bottom of search for a long time until you know the code to actually increase visibility. You're going to spend money to do that. When we think about your own website, instead of having the built-in audience that you have on Amazon, now you have to create that audience and drive them to your own site. And you guys are very familiar with this, but it's kind of, how do you think about investing? Do we invest where we know there's a lot of people and we know that if we hit the right keywords and build the right sales rank, then over time we can win our category search terms? Or do we win by investing lots of dollars to generate traffic over to our own website? And I think it's just kind of a little bit of a pick your poison, but I would say we don't think marketplaces are going away. They are the new retailers of the next generation, and they're the new malls, if you will. So when we think about just how to control your brand, again, it kind of comes back to the point of play on all of these spaces and figure out how to take traffic that's coming from Amazon or eBay or Walmart, and how does that interact with your own website and how you're thinking about the consumers you're engaging with.
Well, I know for me personally, there is a 100% chance that I will start my search at Amazon.
Yep.
And I don't start on Google anymore. I started on Amazon. And then if I don't feel like I get amazing first, the reviews look good, the product looks like a name that I'm looking for, it looks like it's probably a low price or the lowest price. If I get that, I go ahead and buy. If I have any suspicion, now I start my secondary search, go into Google and now start looking at company websites.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually heard someone say reviews are the brand now. So how often, I know this happens to me all the time. Heck, I just bought my kids a trampoline because they need an outlet right now. But I never heard of the brand. I searched trampoline on Amazon. The first thing that came up was 4,000, 4.5-star reviews. I read the comments. There was good content on the page. And to me, the brand became the reliance on other people's opinions. And where Amazon is really great for a brand is if you know how to elicit those positive reviews and get that positive brand, then over time you can really own, when I say own a search term, you can own the trampoline category if you do it the right way. And so, and that's not only just true on Amazon, but, and I hate to just kind of focus there. I know that's where a lot of folks end up shopping, but Walmart is doing some really interesting things. Google and Facebook are really trying to make a splash because they're seeing ad dollars shift over to the Amazon platform. So to your point, you don't search on Google anymore. Google's revenue primarily is ads, right? And same thing with Facebook. So watch some of these big players start to jockey for position. And if you're not playing on all of those marketplaces, I think you're going to miss out.
And you said something earlier. You said you don't see this going away. It's the new mall in effect. These online retailers, and yet malls are going away, right? And so we have to look at what the next curve is going to be. And is there anything to brand durability and stability in having your own website? I know it's hard to build a community around your products on Amazon's website, right? And so is there value there in having your own presence, your own space on your website where you're selling, listing reviews, making sure that people can understand what your products do and why they're valuable?
Well, and my addition to that, or my non-expert view that I just heard between the two of you, was that Amazon. So, Colin, you kind of pointed out the value of paying attention to what I just shared, and then you kind of said, "Yeah, but." And so, yes, everyone's on Amazon now, but to your point, they might not be. It might be that mall that now closes down because the other mall opened down the street, or because people went online. And so I took a lot from what you just said, Colin, of that Google's now going to fight for that space again. And so I hear agility, adaptability, being dynamic with the way that you're constantly evaluating your results and your inputs and everything else. So I wanted to share that reflection on that while you're answering David's question.
Yeah, well, and there's lots of opinions out there. I think to the earlier question on does it make sense to have my own website, remember a third of the market is individual .coms. And you know, if you look at brand control, there's no better way to control a brand than on your own site. What we try to then influence clients on and partners is if you have your own site and you have a brand that has history, the thing that's going to erode that brand is if you lose your pricing control on the other marketplaces. And the way you lose that pricing control is when you have other sellers of your brand on these large marketplaces. So we try to say, let's own every shelf space, if you will. Let's just think of it as a digital shelf space. We want to make sure that our partners can play on every single store shelf and control the content behind their listing and the pricing that they're selling that product for. So the individual .com website that is reflective of my brand is part of the equation, but it's not the full equation. So, you know, I think it's a both and type response, David, in that we think you should be playing where consumers are shopping, which is marketplaces. But we also think that over time, consumers are going to, once they really know your brand and fall in love with your brand, they're going to want to find out more about you. And that's why your own .com website should also be a key part of the equation.
That's great context.
Well, guys, it is now time for the final rundown. So I wanted to start off by asking, what's one of the most impactful books or pieces of literature? It could be an audiobook, could be a podcast that you've ever read or listened to.
Yeah, Brent, do you want to take this, or you want me to jump in first?
No, go ahead. I like your option, then we'll go with option 2.
Yeah, Brent and I were trying to compare notes a little bit beforehand. So I have 4 kids under 7. So the books that I read in my household are like Berenstain Bears and Curious George.
Give the mouse a cookie.
Yeah. So, you know, if I have time to read a book, I'll let you know. But one thing that I try to do is have a little quick snapshot of what's going on in the market and in the business world. And there is it's basically a daily newsletter called Morning Brew. I don't know if you're familiar.
We'll put your affiliate link down on the bottom so you can get your free coffee mug or something. I'm that's at least been good for me over the last. I kind of got introduced to that about 5 months ago. Yep.
It's just a good way for me to keep up with news and things like that. Again, I'm not affiliated with them in any sense, but it's something that helps me keep pulse on the markets and other things that are happening in the business world.
Yep.
And although I will say, Colin introduced me to that as well, so he got his little share to get his little Morning Brew coffee mug. So
I love Morning Brew. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it is a good, valuable source of information. I kind of go the traditional route with books. I've really enjoyed The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. I think it breaks down activities that you do, consistency daily to build on that compound. And he goes through and gives a lot of examples how to execute that. So that's kind of something I've, been consistently dripping on and really enjoy that book.
Great options. Yeah. So you guys have been gracious enough to provide a lot of advice to our listeners, but what's some of the best professional advice that you've ever received?
Yeah, so I have a good friend who is, he's kind of a leadership guru. So he's an author, he's a professor. And one of the things that always stuck with me is to really be a leader, you have to have followers as well. And so just having a title or the position of leadership doesn't necessarily mean you're leading. And I think all of that boils down to leadership is about influence. And can you influence people to a common vision, to a common goal, and get them marching in that direction? And I think, for me, that's just something that as I look at my family, or as I look about the coworkers I'm interacting with, the question becomes, you can judge a leader by who's following them. And I think that it's important to just always keep that in the back of your head. And that's been something that I try to live by as well.
Yeah, for me, it's been, how do you control your day and don't let your day control you? So planning, journaling, understanding what your goals are for the day in order to succeed in whatever bucket category you want to do that has been really big as a mentor. Has kind of really enforced and driven home to me that you have to plan, and a failure to do that is a plan to fail. So planning and controlling your day and maximizing time and effort has been something that's been poured into me.
So you guys have no doubt also had some terrible advice given to you over your careers by different people, either a boss that you had or just somebody in your life. So what's some of the worst professional advice you've received? You don't have to name names, but no, don't name names.
I've been a little bit blessed to have some really good mentors and good leaders in my life. So I think maybe what I would say is it's not someone explicitly giving me bad advice, but I think it's more observation of bad leadership in action, right? And I think it kind of goes back to my earlier point on just because you have a title or a position of leader doesn't mean you're leading. And I think, I'm not going to necessarily call anyone out specifically, but I think and you guys, I'm sure, have seen instances where someone just maybe doesn't approach a situation the right way, or doesn't approach dealing with others the right way. And they use their influence and their title versus truly leading in that situation. So for me, it's more of no one's really given me bad advice. I think I've just watched certain things and say, okay, I'm not sure that I want to model that myself.
Yeah, and kind of along the same lines, it's the whole, you'll figure it out, fake it till you make it. And I think there's a part of that maybe if you're just brand new or starting out, depending on your career journey and where you're at. But for me, that's just been something that's not, ever panned out. It's just been a bad experience. And, just to kind of tie onto that is, leading by example and following and having that plan and having a purpose to it is, something good versus the poor advice I would stay away from.
Well, along the lines of the malls failing and the being dynamic and adaptable and agile, and one that always stuck with me was we've always done it this way, right? Hearing that from some management, we've always done it this way, so why would we change it now? Said Blockbuster, right?
And honestly,
right.
that's kind of the topic of today, right? This is, if you're not playing online and controlling your brand online, that we've always done it this way isn't going to work in the future.
Yeah, business as usual is no longer business as usual, and so there's plenty of opportunities. And speaking of Blockbuster, who I know would love to have a do-over and go back in time and do things a little bit differently, do either of you have something you wish you could go back and do again and do better or do differently?
I'm relatively young in my career, and I've had the opportunity to see a lot of different things. So from finance to marketing to e-commerce to, data analytics. And along the way, what I've realized is how important time with my family really is. And so I think I jeopardized some of that early on in my career to try to chase that carrot, and have since really just reflected on the fact that, time is my most valuable asset, and time with family in particular. So I'm trying to change my own personal balance sheet, if you will, to focus more on time and time spent in a meaningful way versus maybe ways I've spent it to date.
Yeah, and for me, it's, I won't go into details of all the many failures that I have had and experienced, but one of the things I wish I would have, I could go back and do is document those more and reflect on them a little bit more as key learning experiences to continue to grow, or if I get kind of going down that path, know that here's what I would do differently and have done differently to position myself better and maybe shorten that learning curve that I've experienced and use those to springboard me into the right direction going forward, shortening that curve.
Oh, that's great. And what I want people to hear, and most folks hear this from time to time, but what I continue to drill into employees' minds, into my family's mind, is that it's okay to fail, right? In fact, if you can't recall a failure, you're either not trying or you're lying, right? It's one of those. And so let's just accept that people are going to fail. And so fail small, quick, quick and often. And so fail, learn. And so that's why we love being able to wrap up with it's not always a failure, but let's reflect back on what can we share with that other person that we wish we had told ourselves 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And so I love that part of wrapping this up. So is there anything, what's the next big thing? So if you have it crystal clear, good. Otherwise, kind of want to leave it pondering out there for a minute, but what's the next big thing for you, either personally or professionally, that you are okay sharing with our audience?
Yeah, for me, I'm a numbers guy by trade. It's just kind of how I was, that's how I think, that's where I kind of grew up from a professional standpoint. One thing I've realized quickly with e-commerce is data. I know people have been talking about big data forever, right? But there is so much data when it comes to managing a business online. So for me personally and professionally, I'm really exploring how do you make lots of data? How do you turn that into something insightful and meaningful that you can make decisions off of? So I'm really exploring some of these business intelligence tools and ways to surface the right information at the right time, because what I can tell you is the world is changing so fast that we're all going to have to lean into that change. And some of it's going to require guesswork, quite honestly, but the more informed companies, I think, are going to be the companies that win in the end. So I'm really focused on business intelligence tools and data, and I know that that's where Tradefull's thinking as well.
Yeah, and I would say, for me, professionally, I get the opportunity to love to come to work every day and help people navigate the e-commerce sea and go through that process and see them win in business, which is just a wonderful feeling that I have every day to truly help people, their business, their brand, and ultimately increase their sales and put them in another category they didn't know was possible within that short timeline. Personally, it's, family. I have 3 small kids, and I think, the goal for me with them every day is do the right thing right when nobody's looking, and it will make a difference. So I'm big on leading by example at work, and more importantly with my family as well. And I think when you always do the right thing right, it all works out in the end. And that's what I'm looking forward to lead the team at Tradefull, and my number 1 team, Team Bumbaugh, the family at home.
There you go. I love it.
That's great. Thank you guys so much for being on. This was just a fascinating conversation to learn from your experience.
Absolutely. And
thanks so much for having us.
I want to make sure that we leave with that thought there. And so I'm going to quickly plug our Spartan Pro Day that's coming up October 13th. Brent got to come to our one last year. And as we all know, we're in the midst of wild craziness where who knows if a live event's actually going to happen. But thankfully, it's October 13th, hopefully far enough away that all of us are going to look back on this madness and say, what happened? But it's definitely going to happen October 13th. Go to SpartanProDay.com, SpartanProDay.com. If you folks that are listening want to buy tickets, it's going to be completely action-packed. It's going to be full of really insightful conversations like we're having right now. We're going to have some really cool speakers, full of content, full of networking, and full of energy. And so right now, we're not sure if it's going to be in person. We're planning it in person. If not, it's going to be a killer event online. We'd love to see you there. And then Tradefull, it's Tradefull.com, right? That's where people would go to get in touch with you.
That's
you want
correct.
to give out either of your email addresses or any contact info right now if people have further questions? Go ahead,
you
Colin.
can reach out to me, Brent Bumbaugh. My email address is brentb@tradefull.com.
And just to clarify, Tradefull is with 2 L's. So it's Tradefull with 2 L's.com.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for being on, guys. And if you all have any questions, you can reach out to us. If you have questions, you can reach out directly to them. But we're just excited to have you listen to the Pro Show. Stay tuned for more insightful content.